Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the latest segment of Weather Center Nazario. And happy Saturday, happy last day of September for that matter. We're right on the cusp of spooky season. I can't tell you how excited I am to roll into the month of October. Today's Weather Center segment is going to be our weekly and almost in an extent a monthly wrap-up for September and a brief lowdown of what we can anticipate for the first half of October. I do apologize if I seem a little bit more low energy today. I'm not feeling sick in any way, shape, or form, but I have a really massive headache, so I want to rip the Band-Aid off and get this video out to you guys because I do have a lot of pressing information to communicate and a little bit more cause for investigation and just weariness in terms of what the future looks like for the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the hurricane season for that matter altogether. Let's get started on the half-disc visible satellite. I'll take you from left to right, west to east, talking about all of our significant features and the activity we have going on right now before we talk future. Starting out over western North America, you can see this very deep, potent trough axis digging in across the Pacific coastline from British Columbia all the way down to SoCal, even the northern peninsula of Baja California. Just off the coast, it's very hard for you guys to see, but we have a good combination of open and closed cell cumulus, indicative of a ton of cold air just funneling south from the Alaskan Peninsula, the northern Canadian territories, down into western CONUS to its entirety. With this feature moving off to the east, you can expect very elevated winds because of that cold air funneling in, good thunderstorm activity along its leading edge as the frontal system outlining this trough and high pressure system works its way into the Rocky Mountains, the Four Corners, Intermountain West. You can anticipate this is going to kind of push fall into full effect 100%, firing on all cylinders for western CONUS and across the United States for that matter as it continues to traverse North America to its entirety. We now shift our attention to the northeast, who has been battling very severe conditions over the last few days. There's a mature system here, this comma-like structure just off the northeastern coastline that has actually been creating very bad hazards for the northeast, especially the New York area. They are currently under a state of emergency because of the very bad flooding that they've encountered over the last couple of days, and I've been watching footage and all sorts of different posts on social media come out showing folks in waist-deep water, if not higher water, subways fully submerged, vehicles underwater, large amounts of property lost to the very significant floodwaters that have been brewing up there. And it looks like the system is finally trying to move its way off to the east to get that precip field over the northeast out of the picture. So Lord willing, they have some reprieve coming over the next couple of days. I do anticipate as it continues to try to pump off to the east, that rainfall is going to subside as well. So there is good news on the horizon for those of you who may be tuning in the northeast affected by those dangerous flooding conditions. Please know that we're watching closely for you guys. This isn't all about the tropics, and I do anticipate relief is coming soon once that system can get picked up and continue off with the overall jet pattern. Now we'll do a little bit of synoptic analysis for you guys because it's a wonderful day in the weather neighborhood when Mother Nature wants to cooperate to this extent. We have our mature system off the northeast coast with its occluded front down to the triple point here. With this area here where the jet crosses this cloud feature is called your triple point. That's where all of our frontal systems on a chart attach. That's where the jet support kind of helps keep this system alive. That's its IV, if you will, to this winter system, or this fall system, I should say, since, we're not in winter yet. Anyways, I'll take you through a really quick synoptic analysis. So here's our low occluded feature. You can track the frontal appendage all the way through the United States southeast. You can also take it right over the northern peninsula of Florida, where you can see some good residual activity increasing our thunderstorm and rain chances for the day today and the rest of the weekend for that matter. And then it's nice, you can actually see where the warm sector with this comma cloud is pretty plain as day on this visible satellite shot. And then if you follow the cloud features, I know this may be completely foreign to you all watching, but if you watch right where I'm drawing, there's our stationary boundary and our next frontal system attached to a very deep barotropic low spinning just in the corner here of the satellite. It might be a little hard for you to pick up, but there's a very deep, almost modified Arctic system just to the east of Greenland that's dragging the rest of that cold air off towards closer and closer to Europe. Our dueling systems in the central Atlantic have finally concluded their tropical tango. Reno has lost the bare knuckle brawl between Tropical Storm Philippe, and as you can see, most of her energy, if not almost all of her energy entirely, has been stripped from the storm center of circulation. It looks almost like a remnant low at this point, albeit a closed low, which is why we still see her identified as a tropical system by a National Hurricane Center. Philippe is trying to grow in size, but he isn't doing too much better than Rina at this time. You can see a lot of his thunderstorm activity is still to the right of the center. His center is almost entirely exposed still this afternoon. A lot of our models indicate that we could see additional strengthening, even upwards of hurricane strength strength achieved by the time we get to the middle to latter parts of this upcoming week. Now, the reason I drew that little brief synoptic analysis for you guys is it's pretty neat. Once again, when the atmosphere cooperates enough for analysts to clearly see where all of our major large-scale features are, you can almost trace your own forecasted path with those two systems just using this very mocked-up, rough analysis I have on this satellite overlay for you. I'll switch the pen color here, and as Rina slingshots off to the north-northwest, she's going to die as soon as she encounters this stationary frontal feature and continues to get sheared apart by the copious amounts of shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere, as well as Philippe trying to take as much of her energy as possible before moving in potentially on our northern Lesser Antilles. We're watching closely for you guys out there because it looks like you guys could take a very subtle scrape or a close shave, if you will, by the center of circulation of Philippe before it becomes a hurricane as it continues further and further to the north. Still likely to miss Bermuda, thankfully. It could strengthen to a Cat 2. Some of our intensity products want to go as far as major hurricane, but that's still a very low threat, low grade chance. Only the GFS calls for that right now, so we'll wait and see. And it won't be anywhere near anyone to cause any potential harmful damage once it does try to achieve that level of intensity. But again, because of this little mock drawing here, you can see where our weakness is likely to take place. You can track Philippe off to the west before it gets picked up into that weakness as well. As this frontal system moves off to the east, you're going to see where that tunnel, that escape route for both of our systems continues to move as well once it begins to break down our ridge in the Atlantic and allow these systems to move to the north. Now, I'll clear the ink and highlight two major areas that are going to really bear monitoring as we go into the month of October. We have some energy in the main development region upstream of tropical storms Rina and Philippe, and you can see all that residual energy left behind in the Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche by our frontal systems that have been coming down all the way across the Gulf Coast into the Gulf of Mexico for that matter. The Central American gyre is ready. It's ready to fire, and it's primed as we speak. It's reloaded from it creating Idalia back in August, and we're also going to have to watch for something in the main development region that's going to try to pull a Top Gun Maverick, if you guys get the reference, and fly in below the radar of that 10-degree north latitude line, and I'll explain. In the background, between Weather Center segments, I've been doing some homework in terms of what climatology looks like for this time of year with multiple different hurricane seasons over the last 2 decades. I've looked at 03, 04, 05, 06. I've looked at 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, and with every single chart, historical chart that I pull up showing us our storm tracks and where our development is typically seen, I've noticed a really big trend in terms of that 10-degree latitude line. And if you guys harken back to the majority of this hurricane season, a lot of our main development region systems that have formed have stayed just to the north of that 10-degree lat line, either right within that intertropical convergence zone or just above it, breaking off into about the 12 to 14, even the 15-degree latitude line before going off into the central North Atlantic, posing no harm to anybody. It's proven, looking back on historical data, that any system that tries to form below that line has a much greater chance of working its way directly into the Caribbean and becoming a threat for everybody in the Caribbean Sea and eventually down the road for the Yucatan Peninsula, for the Gulf Coast, Southeast United States. A lot of our models suggest this area of energy in particular could do something along those lines, working its way in just to the south, if not right over the southern Lesser Antilles, imposing some substantial rainfall for the ABC Islands as it continues to work off to the west into the central Caribbean, where our Euro and Icon alike want to develop it into something. Even the UK is calling for this, and I'll show you guys that here in a moment. As that CAG begins to fire, we could also see something brewing up over Central America, the Western Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche, and because of these potent frontal systems and long-wave trough axes digging east across the United States, they're going to have only one way to go, guys, and that's off to the northeast, if not the east-northeast, across Florida, across Cuba, the Bahamas, the panhandle of Florida, dare I say it, New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama. All those areas are under the gun and primed for any kind of threats if we do get something going. All right, for the next portion of the segment, we're going to really go in rapid succession, just looking at every single model platform I can dig up for you guys, and I'll show you why it is I've come to this new theory that we may not be looking at one, but two possible areas of development. We could maybe have a 1-2 punch as we go into October with two systems on the near-distant horizon that really bear monitoring. This is our 0Z Euro. At the time of shooting this video, the 12Z Euro was not available to anybody. Unfortunately, it populates much later than most of our other long-range deterministic models, but you go through time, and I want you guys to fixate on what happens out here in the Eastern Atlantic after Rina and Philippe can displace and move out of the picture. We're 4 days days out in time, and if you look closely, I know it's very hard to spot. It almost looks like I'm reaching to try to hype something up, but if you watch closely, and if you've been doing this long enough, you'll start to recognize very weak indications on each of our model platforms that would suggest something more than just general wind flow, general rainfall through a certain area. And you track this through the end of the loop, you can watch it move over the Lesser Antilles and start to become more of an aggressive tropical wave before the Euro model wants to try to develop it into a more concentrated center of circulation or a disturbance to the south of Dominican Republic, Hispaniola. You can also see the Eastern Pacific igniting with good tropical activity, and that frontal system has finally made it through the Gulf of Mexico down to the Yucatan Peninsula, Bay of Campeche. If we switch over to the 0Z Euro vorticity chart, you get a much better look at that system moving through the Eastern Atlantic into the Caribbean. We're going to quickly go through time, and if you watch that pocket of vorticity move across the Lesser Antilles to the north of our islands across South America, you can really see it start to consolidate to the south of Dominican Republic and Haiti. Now, there's two possible outcomes here because I see a very weak trough axis dug in right here, and the ridge that was once predicted yesterday on the Euro to encompass much of the Caribbean and Central Atlantic has been displaced on this model run a little further to the east. So we could see something in the realm of what Franklin did earlier this year, to where this wave or disturbance or whatever it is at this point in time, this is the end of the run, so there's still a lot of wiggle room here. It could either go to the north, or if that ridge does decide to backbuild a little bit stronger than what the 0Z Euro indicates anyways, it could move closer to Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Cuba, and start to become more of a prevalent threat for the Gulf of Mexico. We're now rolling into the icon. As you go through time at the icon, you can see Philippe and Rina start to move off to the north, and then there you have it. There's our next bundle of vorticity, and the German model this morning looks a lot more impressive than what the Euro is showing. You can see it moving through the Lesser Antilles and really starting to consolidate with a little bit of outflow already indicated by our streamlines local to that center of circulation. So the icon and the Euro are neck and neck in terms of bringing something into the Caribbean, south of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and starting to build something along the way of a tropical disturbance or maybe even a full-fledged tropical storm. Here's our Canadian model. The Canadian model is the one that's been screaming at all of us to try to pay attention to it because it's been forming something up near that Central American gyre source region. This is 850 millibar winds, and I have that up because as you go to about the 4th, if not the 5th of October, look at all this widespread cyclonic turning you get in the winds all across Central America. That is our gyre, folks. I'll even write it on the screen. That is our Central American gyre in full effect. I'll clear the ink and we'll go further in time, and you can see that area of lowering pressure continues to organize. You get a couple of embedded vorticities in the Bay of Campeche off the east coast of Central America, and you get another wave trying to develop in the southern Caribbean before it starts to push north and try to do something and further organize as it makes its way towards the Yucatan and into the Gulf of Mexico. Earlier this week, I thought all of our models were predicting one piece of development just in different areas, but after really looking at things and investigating what each of our models depict and at what time frame they do so, it definitely looks like the theory of two entities that bear watching is becoming a little bit more realistic. Here's the GFS. We're going to use the preset model because it's a little bit easier to pick up on all the different circulations and low pressure centers that the GFS is highlighting near the CAG and near the Gulf of Mexico. But as you go through time, you can see near the Western Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, that front comes down and we see that CAG really ignite, and look at all that tropical energy. It starts to close off into a tropical wave or something along the lines of a tropical disturbance, maybe a tropical depression, before tracking through the southern central portions of Florida, before maybe becoming more of a post-tropical cyclone at this point. I know it's just off screen, but this looks more frontal in nature based on this precip signature by the GFS. Now, like I said, guys, I'm showing you everything. I'm going to lay it all out on the table and get it all out there for you guys to visually absorb and take in. We're at the 0Z UK model now, and if, again, you watch out near that main development region, all in through this area towards the Lesser Antilles, I want you to watch closely what tracks to the west towards our southern Lesser Antilles Islands. So you go through the loop. This is 3 days out. You can see Philippe still wreaking havoc on the Lesser Antilles, but you go 4 days out, you start to see a semblance of some vorticity in the main development region preparing to cross that 10-degree north latitude line. See how it's just off to the south of it still? Finally, as you go 4 to 5 days out, you see it consolidate, move into the Caribbean, and start to become more spherical, more circular in its development, which indicates a tropical disturbance down at the surface. And then last but not least, I know that a lot of us don't pay any sort of attention to the Korean model, but I have been watching it all hurricane season, and an enormous shout out to Mike's weather page for posting some of the information that he does, because he's also brought up some comparison charts and statistical data showing each of our individual model platforms and how they've handled the different systems we've seen all hurricane season. So if you are from Mike's weather page or a big supporter of Mike's weather page, I applaud him and I thank him for posting that information and proving the little bit of credibility that these lesser known models have, because they've actually been shown to have handled our systems, Lee, Idalia, Franklin, even earlier in the season, Brett, Cindy, etc., Don for that matter, really well, despite popular belief that no one pays any attention to them. They're terrible models. And the reason I bring it up as the last but certainly not least is watch what happens in the Gulf of Mexico, and this has been trending on the KMA for the last 3, if not 4 days now. We're going to shoot forward to the 4-day mark, 5-day mark, and there goes Philippe deep and down into a hurricane, moving off into the Atlantic, no substantial threat to anybody. Here is our weak wave indicated right over top the Lesser Antilles. You can see that little bit of faint kinking in our streamlines. That is a clear indication of a wave traversing the Lesser Antilles, Greater Antilles area as we speak at this point in the run. I'll clear the ink, and I want you to look closely in the Gulf of Mexico. As that front comes down, look at what we have form up. Look at that closed low and all that increased wind speed trekking its way towards the Gulf Coast and unfortunately, inevitably, off to the east-northeast towards the same general area that we saw Idalia make landfall back in August. This has been trending. This has been on the model since, I believe, the 26th, if not the 27th. It is now the 30th of September, and I don't anticipate this is going to change. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to highlight them on this chart here. We have a possible developing feature out in the western MDR moving into the Caribbean, and you can see it plain as day on the Korean model. We really got to watch the western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico over the next 7 to 14 days, the next 2 weeks for that matter. I think with everything coming together the way that it has, and me being able to check capital D development off of my checklist, and before I go any further, I'll remind you, if you've been watching Weather Center Nazario, the biggest thing I've emphasized is we've seen the ensembles, we've seen a model run or two indicate development. I want to see from ensemble consistency to models developing something, I wanted to see consistent development across our model platforms, and we have it. I haven't been looking at landfall locations, I haven't been looking at intensity, where it could form, how strong, how weak, other things. I've simply been looking at all of our main model runs, the deterministic ones, not the ensembles. I've been waiting for all of our deterministic models to show us development, general development, not here, not there, not anywhere for that matter. I just want to see if all of our models agree based on atmospheric conditions that there will be development. Now that we have that, we can check that box in terms of our layers of evidence, and now we can start to dig in where we'll see the development. It's a step-by-step process with forecasting, and that's what I've been trying to do for you guys every step of the way, because with everything I've seen this morning, I think now it turns from investigating to I'm a little concerned. Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, Cuba, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, even the Antilles, and dare I say it, the Gulf Coast, and especially Florida, really need to be paying close attention to this. We really need to start watching. As we get into October, it's not a matter of how, it's a matter of when, especially with this level of consistency across model platforms. We'll go ahead and wrap up this Weather Center segment. We are right on the cusp of spooky season, guys, and it looks like the tropics have a couple tricks up their sleeve they're going to try to unveil to us. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the page, or if you're new to the page, please hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, because as the days go on, I anticipate we're really going to watch for updates, and you need to be paying attention to these. It goes without saying that no one in the weather community has really been putting the emphasis on this like I have. I'm not tooting my horn. I want that to be as humbly taken as possible, and if you guys have seen any other resources out there, whether it be on YouTube, social media, on actual news broadcasts, out on television, and you've been seeing people talking about this, drop it in the comments. I'd love to collaborate. I'd love to talk, have a conversation. I'm not trying to take the credit here. I just know from what I've seen and what I've been watching every day, no one has been putting a lot of energy into this, and I feel like despite what's happening with Philippe and Rina, yes, they're imminent threats, especially Philippe to the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, this could be a little bit more severe if things decide to get going. Please share this video. Please go ahead and spread the word. Talk to whoever you have to talk to. Share it on your own social media. I would genuinely appreciate it, not for the views, but for the awareness, so we can hopefully get other people inspired enough to start talking and speculating about what we have here. I've presented the evidence. evidence. I've laid it all out for you guys. I leave it with you for you to do with it as you please. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. Stay safe out there. If anything does continue to trend or look more concerning, I will break live or we'll have a video on Sunday, even though it's my usual rest day from weather. But you can guarantee I'm going to continue watching this every hour on the hour like I have been, watching out for you guys and watching our backs, not only in the Caribbean, but now it looks like the United States could be under the gun. We'll see you soon, guys. Happy last day of September. I have something very fun in store for you over the next 24 hours, and I hope you tune in to watch it. It's a nice little spooky little spoof for the weather page, and I hope you enjoy, because, of course, we got to have fun. Even though things are looking a little intense out there, we got to make sure we stay positive, and to ring in the fall spooky season of October, why not have a little bit of entertainment alongside that, especially to detract from what's happening here. We'll see you all very soon. Thank you for watching. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.